Okay, so this is my third or fourth time shooting this video. I just, life got in the way or whatever a little bit. The first time I tried to film it, I was just talking in circles as well as in incomprehensible gibberish. The second time then, I was like wrong about a load of stuff. After I literally edited it all together, I was like, wait, that's not true. And I just kind of wasn't happy with it. So now we're doing this one. And I'm hoping it turns out. I'm also coming off the back of like an illness thing, so I'm hoping my voice doesn't just disappear halfway through. But yeah, okay. We're talking about Drachenfest US. So a quick double explanation. First of all, what is Drachenfest? So Drachenfest is one of the biggest live action roleplay events in the world. Second part of that, what is live action roleplay? So live action roleplay is effectively a kind of game you can play wherein you control characters. So the same way as you would do with like video games or Dungeons and Dragons in a lot of ways. The difference is instead of, holding a controller and moving a different character on a screen or having a little figurine representing your character on a tabletop, you're representing the character with the armor or the clothing or whatever you have on you being that character's clothing and armor or whatever. So it's you playing the character versus you externally controlling a character. If this is your first time coming across this sort of thing, I know it sounds a bit mad, but I would say if you have any interest in, I want to say like fantasy, but there's like live action roleplay for every genre you could imagine, like westerns and sci-fi and all that stuff. If you have any interest in like the immersiveness of those genres, I think you'd really enjoy this, and it's worth looking into. Like, if you're in any way interested at all, you're gonna have a great time. So with that explanation out of the way, the next thing I gotta explain is, what is Drachenfest US? Maybe the answer is a bit obvious, but Drachenfest US is the American version of Drachenfest that this year, well, I say this year, but I mean last year now, ran in Sparta, New Jersey. And I didn't know Sparta was in New Jersey. I guess assumed it was in Greece for some reason, but turns out Sparta's in America. So there you go. Leonidas probably had like a New York accent or something historically. That's, learning experience, learning every day. So like every year we have like German Drachenfest, been running for years and years and years. This year was the first year that we had an American one as well. And it's like they're kind of lightly linked, but they're very much both like their own things. Seeing as how I've been going to like the German Drachenfest for years and years and years, and I've been doing videos and stuff from that, and I got to go along to Drachenfest US, I figured I may be in a good spot to, I don't want to like directly compare them, but I think that will definitely happen, seeing as how they're like both Drachenfest. I just thought it might be good if I gave my like thoughts and feelings on how the event went, and like my experience of what the event was like and how it was and everything. So my thoughts would be that there's probably a good few people out there who are maybe have heard about the American Drachenfest or have come across it online and are sort of thinking about like, should I go, should I not go? So I'm hoping this video will kind of help those people out a bit as well. Just before we get started with the video and everything, I want to give like the generic disclaimer that all of this stuff is just like my own personal thoughts and feelings on this. Other people are going to have totally different opinions, and those are going to be just as valid as mine. Also, another thing is that I tell people all the time that I'm kind of an eternal noob, in that I am absolutely not any kind of expert on anything live action roleplay. The furthest from it. I just kind of turn up and wing it. So take that into account as well. I am not an expert. Okay, let's get on with it. So, starting off, I'm just going to begin with like the biggest possible spoiler, because I know not everybody has time to sit through a YouTube video this length, even though I don't know how long it's going to be because I've not edited it yet, which is the answer to the question, did I enjoy this event? / do I think it's a good event? And the answer is, yes I do, yes I did, yes, generally yes. So I had a really good time. And if you're thinking about going to the next one, I think you absolutely should. If you're hovering over the buy button right now on their website, I think you should click buy. So yeah, that's it. If you like this video, you can hit the like button down below. If you want to leave a comment, I'd really appreciate it. No, I'm joking. I have more to say. I have more. Okay, right, getting into it now. So, going off how I filmed my last 2 attempts at this video, I found what was working is just listing out like good and bad things that I experienced at this event. So we're just going to kind of roughly go like good, bad, good, bad, good, bad, and see how we get on. Because I also want to be generally, constructive and optimistic, but I'm not going to ignore things that I feel could have been done better. Right, so first good point. Something that really set a really nice tone for the entire event was the kind of community that it attracted, or I guess produced, I don't know what way you would say that about the people who turn up to a specific event, but it felt like the entire player base that came along, not even player base, the staff and everything, everyone was super welcoming. Like, I've been to, you know, events and stuff before where there's been, you know, there's a bit of a divide between, like, staff and players. Like, sometimes those two groups would be a little bit at odds. Or there'd be certain, you know, cliques of players that didn't play well with others, stuff like that. Not the case here really at all. Everyone was super welcoming. I never really felt like I couldn't talk to anyone. I know even people who are like new to doing the whole live action roleplay thing, they were finding it even easy to like find people to go do quests with and like adventures and experience it all. It created this really cool feeling of like this game has like a lower barrier to entry. It wasn't super intimidating walking up, because I thought it was going to be, you know, everyone turns up and they're all a bit awkward because nobody has really played this game before. But that wasn't the case at all. Everyone was super into it, and it seemed like there was this unspoken thing of everyone recognized that nobody has been here before. And that was just, I don't know, that was just a really cool vibe. Also, absolutely not a dig at the German event, but it was kind of a relief not having to say English bitte like multiple times a day. Not that it's ever a problem speaking English in the German one, it's just I didn't have to have that go-to phrase. I'm really bad at German. So the next kind of thing I want to point out is a criticism. So a thing I had a lot of trouble with for this trip was the commute to the event grounds. And you know, maybe this only affects people who are like flying in or, you know, traveling really far, but it was not easy to get to the event because there's no like public transport that will get you to the event. Like, it wasn't even like get a bus and another bus and another bus and 3 hours later you're there. There was just nothing out close to it. So I had to rely on like Lyft, you know, like Uber or whatever. And the address from the website that I put into Lyft did not take me to the right place. So that was a whole thing. So pretty much if you're in that situation where you're coming from another country or coming from a really far away part of America or something, definitely try and coordinate with people for commuting to the event. So like I flew in to Newark Airport from Ireland, so from Dublin to Newark, and from there it was just kind of a total nightmare finding the place. So just something to keep in mind. So moving on to the next point, which is a good one, and it's maybe a little bit weird, but if you've been to German Drachenfest before, you'll know what I mean. American Drachenfest was totally flat. So German Drachenfest takes place on this very slight incline, which you don't think is a big deal when you first get there, but like 2-3 days in, all of a sudden your legs are always in pain. And whenever you're like, oh, well, I go up to the in-time town for some lunch, you kind of look to the horizon, which is up a bit, and you're kind of like, I'll go hungry. Which is always a bit of an obstacle with Drachenfest. Like, you get over it and all, but it's a thing. You can't deny it's a thing. The US Drachenfest, though, it's just flat. It's like a flat campground. Your legs aren't in bits from walking up hills and down hills and all over the place. Like, I didn't realize that would be something that would like stand out to me immediately. Another thing about the event grounds, and it's a detail I actually wasn't into when I first noticed it, but I realized it was actually quite cool. It all takes place within a forested area. So German Drachenfest, I know I probably shouldn't be comparing German Drachenfest to American Drachenfest. I should be treating them like each are their own thing. But they're both called Drachenfest, so I feel like they're asking for it. So German Drachenfest is in a big open field, and all of the different competing camps are all like facing each other, but it's a huge distance apart. With just this big open field in front of every camp, with like the in-character town off up the top of this hill. So everybody can see each other's camps and stuff, and if there's any fighting happening out in the field, everyone can see that. The American one, because it's in these woods, it's kind of like all of these alleys and corridors, so you never know what's around the next corner. When I first turned up, I was really like, oh, it's not Drachenfest-ish. There's one area that's going to be like the battlegrounds kind of thing, but all of the camps are hidden down different alleys and corridors, which made it a little tough to navigate sometimes, but it actually really added to this feeling of like exploration and adventure. And like, you don't know what was going to be around the next corner, and you felt like you traveled further than you have, or like it made each camp feel more unique as well. I think it made sieges and stuff a little bit awkward. It was really a unique element to the game, and it kind of made it stand out more from like the German one, where it's not just like a carbon copy of the German game. It was cool though, I really enjoyed it. Also, the American Drachenfest had fireflies. I had never experienced fireflies before. I thought these were like LEDs people had hung in trees or thrown on the ground or something. When I realized they were small flying beetles that emit their own light. I don't know if that's worth adding or deducting points from an event, depending on the insect life. But I thought that was really cool. That really wowed me, to be honest. But in fairness, I am easily impressed by bugs. That was that bit. The next kind of one is another criticism. I know it's a bit of a vague one, but hopefully I can clear it up. But that's communication. So communication wasn't the best in things related to this event. One thing that wasn't actually clear to me before arriving at the game was they were really relying on people using their own forums on like their website, where, you know, with German Drachenfest, they've all the social media presence. So you would just go to their Facebook and, you know, if you need to organize carpooling or anything, you would put out the call there. And I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of like Drachenfest Discords and stuff like that. But it's always easy to find those people or those, you know, channels of communication because German Drachenfest is on different social media platforms, where Drachenfest US, as of recording this anyway, they don't have any kind of Facebook group or anything. Like, I get that there's probably an idea of they're able to support their, you know, players and the kind of conversations that are taking place on a platform they can 100% control versus, you know, those conversations happening on Facebook where they have to rely on Facebook's tools, which makes sense, but I think it was to the detriment of people trying to talk about the event and find out information and meet each other beforehand and stuff. I guess without shouting on about it, I think it would be beneficial for Drachenfest US to have more of a social media presence rather than just, you know, somewhere where they advertise. It should be a place where people can coordinate and have conversations about the event. Again, understand why they're maybe leaning away from that. Also think that they shouldn't, though. There was also, I heard a lot of people being like, they were confused about like when the game was starting, even though the game had started like the day before. This is also me experiencing stuff in like the American live action roleplay community for the first time, where they were like sitting at camp waiting for a ref or something to like come in and be like, okay guys, you're all gonna go out into the woods and you're gonna find some creatures and you're gonna fight them and kill them. Where it's like, Drachenfest is a sandbox. You kind of, you know, you make your own adventure. It's kind of more of a setting for adventure to happen. It's like, yeah, there's a contest and stuff happening, but the whole thing is the contest doesn't really matter. And maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but like the whole camp contest thing is really just a scenario to kind of get things moving. So it's not a you sit and wait and get given a quest or a job or some kind of tip that you have to go out and do a thing and you win the game. It's the kind of interactions and like adventures that you come across. I guess the sort of ambient environment is what Drachenfest is. That was almost like like the friends we made along the way sort of argument there, but you know what I mean. It's not handed to you. It's supposed to be you go out and make it yourself. Is the thing. And a lot of people seemed totally unclear about that. And that comes down to communication. They didn't know that they were supposed to be going out doing things. Which I get that there's probably a lot of games where it is supposed to be like that. You're issued your tasks and stuff. But I think maybe the difference wasn't made clear kind of across the board. There's also with like German Drachenfest, when people show up, if even a big group of new players shows up, there's this like learning by osmosis type thing that happens, where you're talking to people who have been going to Drachenfest for a couple of years or are really knowledgeable about Drachenfest and stuff like that, and you're learning how to do things from them and from being around people who do know. And that couldn't happen at Drachenfest US because no one had been there before. So I think it needed to be hammered home a little bit more what way this like environment works and how the game kind of generally is played, in that it's kind of open, as well as like how the fighting is supposed to work. I noticed a ton of people who were super unclear on the fighting. And like Drachenfest US's rulebook is really good. It's really digestible. The information is really good. But people at the event, when they were turning up and like doing the fighting, there was some error happening in communication where, and they were genuinely confused when they were getting called out on it then, where it wasn't clear how the fighting was supposed to work. I'll talk a little bit more about the fighting later, but just I wanted to point out like there was like communication issues for sure at the event. And there was another thing that people seemed really unclear on. And in fairness to the organizers, I specifically heard them saying to big groups of people explaining this concept, right? And it's called playing to lift. It's kind of like you're maintaining an element of competitiveness, but you're also playing to lift the person you're fighting as well as the people around you. I mean, like kind of not giving someone the win, but making other people look good. And if other people are also playing to lift, they're going to be making you look good. And it's about that. It creates this ambient feeling of cool things happening all around you. So like, there was this big aspect of people being really hung up on their stats and how much damage they were doing and how many hits it was taking to win and how quickly you could score a point And it's not about that. Like, you gotta throw all that stuff away if you're going to Drachenfest. That's not how it works. Or, just to go on a little bit of a segue, I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but I think it's still relevant. So, like, I was watching the final battle, and, okay, everybody was doing their formations and their shield walls and stuff. And, you know, folks were firing arrows back and forth, as you do, because that's pretty cool, seeing arrows flying around. The amount of people I saw in their lines getting full-on hit with an arrow, like, bam, right there, doing the look and then not taking the hit, not even reacting to it. That's like kind of not on. Like, that's not fair on the person who fired an arrow at you. It's not fair on the people around you. And I really feel like that was like poor form, the people who did that. I saw a lot of people doing that. But I also understand that they have gotten into formation. They've marched the whole way here. They've been waiting for this final battle all week. They don't want to get taken out with an arrow before the fucking fighting even begins. That would suck. And you're totally right, that would suck. But that doesn't mean you don't react to a hit. You don't have to be like, shit, now I've only two health points left or something. But react to the hit. So it's not even just about like you and the person who shot at you. It's like, if you're all in a line and you get hit with an arrow, see someone get hit with an arrow next to you, and they go, ah, and people have to like get them back up, and they're like, oh, get your shields up. That creates a cool feeling. That person doesn't necessarily have to take any damage, in all honesty. I know some people will be pissed to hear that, but it's the truth. If you fire an arrow into an enemy line and you see commotion and someone kind of take a hit, you feel pretty cool. The people around you who are like picking you back up and being like, whoa, this is intense, they feel cool. Sacrificing all that just so you have like an extra health point or something, it doesn't make sense. It's about everyone else playing. It's playing to lift everyone else, but just don't ignore it. Ignoring stuff like that, it's kind of the opposite of what you want to be seeing. Just bringing it back, I think there was a misunderstanding on that concept of playing to lift and creating this ambience for everyone else. I don't know if I made any sense just now, but it was something I noticed wasn't the same in the US Drachenfest compared to the German one. Okay, I feel like I got real rambly there, so we're going to move on to another good point, and that good point is Limbus. So at Drachenfest, when you get killed, you don't actually die outright. So you go to Limbus, which is like the underworld or like spirit world or afterlife or something. And if you get through Limbus and come out the other side, you come back to life, but you can't remember how you died or what just happened within Limbus. So it's a whole mystery. And even kind of out of character, you're supposed to like, you know, you don't tell anyone what happens in Limbus. What happens in Limbus stays in Limbus. Where if you want to find out what happens there, you have to die. So really, I shouldn't tell you what happens in Limbus, but I'm going to. So when you die, you go to Limbus and you go into this really dark, come out the other side, and that's it, you're back. And man, it was just such a good time. Like, I thought I knew what was going to happen with it, and it turns out I had no idea. It was just so smart. It was such a smartly done mechanic that I wasn't ready for, and I'm kind of glad I wasn't ready for it. And if you do go to Drachenfest US, make sure you experience Limbus at least once, because all of that stuff I told you in great detail just now, honestly, even better in person. I guess I wanna double up. I'm gonna do another positive thing related to like in-game stuff, and that is about the avatars. So the avatars are like leaders for each camp, and they're so powerful that they cannot take part in the battles, or else everything would get destroyed, sort of thing. So that everyone is fighting on kind of their behalf. There's details you could go into there, but that's roughly how it goes. They have these big kind of shoulder things, and they're cool. They're just real cool. So coming to Drachenfest US, this is not deducting points from like the OG German Drachenfest avatars, but man, there's a couple of the avatars from the American version that are maybe my favorite avatars now. Like, if it was a contest of which avatars I thought were cooler, I'm not gonna name names or put them on a list or anything. There's a couple of the American ones though that will be like higher than German ones. Again, not shitting on the German one, just wasn't ready for being blown away by some of the guys playing the avatars in the American game. Just to name a few at random, Silver Avatar, man, he was awesome. He was just awesome. He had this really great presence, spoke really well, was very like, just nailed it. I don't want to go on too much like fanboying about people, but like, he really just did a really good job. Another one was like the red avatar. He was like this really kind of it gave a menacing vibe, really intimidating. He's real tall. Really liked how he did it. Another one that I didn't get to interact with really directly, but they were playing the shadow avatar. You know, normally he's like, ooh, murky and kind of dark and magical kind of thing. But it looked like they had kind of a zombie-ish thing going on, which I thought was real cool. Was not expecting that at all. Doing kind of a very, either kind of corrupted or sort of undead looking character that's an avatar. I just thought that was a really good way to take it as well. But yeah, I guess just to tie that onto the end of the Limbus thing, the avatars were class. That was another really good point for American Drachenfest. They were really good. Yeah, I don't know if any of the avatars from the American Drachenfest will see this or anything, but in case you do, just want to say I was super impressed. He's did a really good job, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what else he's doing in future. Okay, moving on to another criticism, and that is about the accommodation. So, I did not have a good time with the provided accommodation. So, something that was a really cool selling point for Drachenfest US was if you didn't have a tent or your own kind of in-time accommodation, you could rent a bunk in like one of these cabins that were around the event grounds. Really good idea, because that's one of the things for German Drachenfest that could be a huge pain, is finding a tent or renting a tent. Because the thing is, like, all the tents that are within the kind of, I guess, game area, you could say, have to be relatively period looking. So normally they're kind of bell tents and teepees and stuff, just to give it this like war camp type feel. So you can't have, you know, your luminous blue nylon type tent that's going to be put in like a different area altogether. So normally you would rent one of these tents from someone who has a whole bunch of them. And you know, it can be kind of a pain if you have a group of people who are trying to all find accommodation at once together and they don't have tents. So then providing this, you know, it solves a lot of problems. However, I would say how the accommodation was done this year was not worth it. Like if I was like a brand new player coming in and I didn't know anyone on the staff or anything like that, I would have had a really bad time. So I would say if you're someone coming in and you're kind of relying on this accommodation thing, like the bunk rentals, sure, sign up for it, but like nag pretty much. I know this is maybe not going to be the best thing to suggest, but make sure your name is physically on a list. I mean, like, triple check that shit, and when you're on the way to the event, send another email or give them a phone call or something and just make sure your name is attached to a specific bunk. Like, to be honest though, the genuine Drachenfest experience is kind of, like, having a tent is part of that. Like, being in, like, this war camp and hearing it out and around you and stuff, that is part of the experience. And while having a cabin with, like, a bunk is handy, if you're given the opportunity to choose between, like, a tent or a bunk, go with the tent, is what I would say as well. Like, if anyone was going to offer tent rental for Drachenfest US, I think that would be a real good move. That would be super handy for so many people. Side note for if you are staying in a tent at any of these kind of events, bring your own little personal light, just a little flashlight or something. Like, I know German Drachenfest, they give you tiny little, like, honestly they're only like this big, like flashlights, but having like an in-time lantern or something, absolutely worthwhile. Just a quick hot tip for you. To be honest, that was probably the most negative tone point that I have in this video. So we're going to move on to another point. I want to say this is a positive point, but I dare say it could be a controversial one. And that is the Drachenfest US tavern, miles better than any of the German Drachenfest taverns. I said it. And honestly, it's not because German Drachenfest taverns are bad. I always have a lot of fun at them, and the beer's real nice and everything. But the American Drachenfest one was just so fun. It was always just like, when you go up and order a drink, it was a good time. And then you go back to your table and sit down and continue having a good time with your friends. The staff were always in character and still getting the job done. Like, they had this girl behind the bar. And like, I don't know if anyone has played Bloodborne here, but there's this character you interact with to like level up and stuff, who's like a living doll. And she was kind of like this. She was this sort of like, not mannequin, what's the term? Kind of like a puppet. So she was like this living automaton who was sort of like emotionless but very polite sort of thing. It was just really cool. Every time you go up and you get a beer, she'd like have a chat with you about something in character or ask you questions about a thing. I honestly can't praise her enough for how well she did. The folks running the tavern were class. Also, One of them is a very prominent TikToker. I will add their channel. Is that what you call TikToks? Do TikTokers have channels? I'm old. I'll include a link to their stuff down below though. They were a super cool person. They were kind of like the tavern owner, and their character was kind of like a little crazy, but man, such a good time to hang out with. I don't know, I couldn't get over how good the tavern was. I'll go on too long if I keep talking about it. I think it's worth also little kudos, shout out thing to the people running the Warriors Lodge, which was kind of their version of the Fighters Guild. They looked like they were like run off their feet doing the classes, and that seemed to be where a lot of people learned how the fighting worked. They just did like a proper professional like stage combat teaching style job. Really impressive to watch even. They had this really cool tournament where everyone was kind of like applying what they knew. We'd nearly want to say like the fighting classes from the Warriors Lodge should be mandatory for everyone, but that is impossible. But no, they were awesome, and if you're going to the event, you should absolutely try to get in on the Warriors Lodge classes. Because they're a cool sound bunch of people, and two, they're really good at what they do. So, highly recommend. I think actually it's not everything. That's not everything. I have another thing I want to say, and it doesn't fit into the good or bad category, right? So I'm very excited about this. Because the people who turned up and the people running the event were so welcoming, when you were walking around at night or walking around on your own at night, there was no sense of danger. You never felt like you were going to get robbed or mugged or anything like that. Where in, German Drachenfest, can you really say you even went to Drachenfest if you didn't get mugged? Like, there's no orc camp abducting people or, monsters roaming around or anything. Kind of really only the player camps. And I think there was big chunks of time where everyone was kind of playing very defensively. So there was no one wandering around kind of robbing people. You didn't hear stories about people getting mugged or fighting off bandits or anything. And maybe it's a bit too late to try and pitch this. And it's reliant on if I have the money and the time and the fucking people to go to Drachenfest with. I would love to try and set up a bandit camp for Drachenfest US. It'd just all be about having a good time, playing to lift others, providing this sense of danger at night, running scams on people, running scams on entire camps, getting into trouble with the law, that kind of thing. I think it could be really, really fun. If we could get maybe like 10 people, maybe 15 people if there was enough space and we had enough time to plan and everything, and just have a good time with it, So yeah, someone let me do a bandit camp. Come on, let me do bandit camp. But yeah, so that was all the points that I had. Overall, I really had a good time at this event. That's the big takeaway from this one. And if you're thinking about going, I would say do it. Go for it. It's a really welcoming crowd and it's a really fun game. So even if you've never done it before, I would say chance it. Go for it. But yeah, that's all I got. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it was helpful. If you have any of your own experiences or any of your own questions and stuff that you want to maybe throw out there, definitely leave them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, you can hit the little thumbs up button down there to give it a like. And yeah, I hope I can afford and then also get the time to go to the next American Drachenfest. And I hope I see a bunch of yous there. But yeah, look, I'll stop shiting on now. That's everything I got. So I will see yous in the next one.